The 12th century is often seen as a turning point in the history of contract. This is meant and taken to mark the departure from the early Middle Ages, in which contracts were created, in which obligations were created, primarily through the use of rituals. So, for example, I might shake your hand, and this would be the basis of a contract. From the 12th century, under the influence of new legal ideas, primarily from canon law and from Roman law, contract is thought to have resided more in consent and in the free will of the parties. Is that right?
Yes. The change in the European culture brought more subtlety in the construction of a contract, with all its consequences, which can be very important for a society. So the Church was very keen to preserve the freedom of will of the two parties when they agree upon a certain contract. But also Roman law taught that every consentment have to have also an equitable content. From an economical point of view, the balance between the advantages of the two parties have to be fair, so that any consentment about an unfair content will be void and not effective.
Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting because in the customary literature of the 13th century, in particular in France, so these are the coutumiers, we often find actually these Romano-canonical ideas at play in contracts. So Beaumanoir, for instance, is very keen on consent. He's very keen on making sure that consent is freely given and that people are not coerced or intimidated into making agreements. And in part, for Beaumanoir, this is because coerced agreements may actually work to the disadvantage of the contracting party. So you have this kind of hybridization of consent and the equitable contract.
Anyway, this does not mean that form is completely abandoned. Form remains a very important part of every contract, not only because of the ritual the law imposed to conclude a contract, but also you have to think of the necessity of proof in the provision of a possible trial. So the contract started to be mainly written, actually. Theoretically, is not the written document that makes the form of the contract, because a written document only records that there was a ritual form in the moment of the agreement, and it lists the name of the witnesses. But by matter of fact, this written document became more and more important in every trial.
Yes. But I think one of the interesting differences between different parts of Europe and one of the different ways of thinking about how contract and the law of obligations more broadly evolves is looking at the interplay between these rituals and the prominence attached to them in the case of a trial, for example, versus the written document and written proof in a trial. So, for example, in 12th century northern France, we often find that, yes, documents are written recording contracts, but attached to these documents are the little sticks or the little pennies that contractants would give to the other. And it's hard to ascertain in those situations what exactly is more important, the written word or some form of memory of the ritual. And I think this is an interesting contrast across different parts of Europe, which
maybe we can say that in every part of Europe and at every level of law, the Middle Ages transforms the contract in a complex phenomenon made by consentment, equitable content, and a particular form.
Yeah.